Texas, thanks so much for being with us. I want to start with your position because you're on the Foreign Affairs Committee. So let's start in the Middle East. I want to talk about what we saw happen yesterday. President Trump basically saying Hamas will disarm, and if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. What's your position on that?
It's long overdue, but, the Middle East has always been a source of tension. I was there in May, met with Prime Minister Netanyahu before the assault on Iran to take out their nuclear program. I was in there in August with the speaker. But it's going back to the Reagan doctrine, peace through strength, that there will be consequences to bad behavior. I know he gave Iran 60 days to get their act together and wind down their nuclear program. But when they didn't do that, he wasn't afraid to respond. And same thing with Hamas. We're hoping Hamas has released all of the hostages living, not all the dead hostages, but we're hoping that they do go for this amnesty deal. They cannot continue to occupy Gaza. And so this is the step in the right direction towards what we call normalization. That's normalization between Saudi, the Emirates, and Israel. In fact, they were there on that path until Iran lit up its proxy on October 7th.
But if Hamas does not disarm voluntarily, how involved do you think the United States should get?
I don't think we need boots on the ground, but I do think we can provide various technologies, weapon systems to assist Israel in this effort. I really hope the IDF is pulled back into northern Gaza, and I hope it doesn't come down to that.
I want to ask you about another war that's cooking right now in Ukraine. We have an important meeting at the White House on Friday with President Zelensky, talking to the president multiple times recently about upping the ante and the type of weaponry that Ukraine is getting. We're talking about going so far as to send Tomahawks. At least the president hasn't turned this down yet.
Right. What
would that mean for potentially turning the tide on the war, and do you think the U.S. should go there?
Well, either you're all in or you're out, right? Yeah. And I've never advocated putting boots on the ground, but providing the weapon systems. I was with Mr. Yermak this morning, who's the president's his chief, counsel, talking to him about getting more weapon systems into Ukraine, particularly air defense systems. I think this goes back to a similar argument. I think, the president's given Putin an opportunity to negotiate in good faith. Mm-hmm. He has turned that down. He did these provocative invasions of Polish airspace with drones, nuclear bombers close to the Baltics. This doesn't make the president very happy. I do think you're going to see a very positive meeting on Friday between President Zelensky and President Trump. And in addition, there will be discussions about secondary sanctions and also tapping into the frozen Russian assets to help pay for this war and help buy the weapon systems that I saw, with people like Yermak at this military expose we had yesterday. One in particular is a counter-drone measure that can take down swarms of drones at one particular time. 50 to 100 drones can be eliminated from the sky. This is the kind of technology they need.
A drone wall. It's incredible, some of the stuff that we're seeing from some of the smaller contractors. But Tomahawks are pretty old-fashioned when you get right down to it. Would the threat of a Tomahawk going into Moscow change the dynamic here?
I don't think it's going to go that far. I wouldn't advise that. That would be a little provocative. But I think you've seen a change in the narrative between, say, the isolationists in the White House. Now the president saying, I think Ukraine should take all of its territory back.
It's a 180.
It has completely changed. And I feel getting the emergency wartime supplemental bill both on the floor and passed, had I not been able to achieve that, I think Russia would be occupying Ukraine today, and we prevented that. The Tomahawks, it's a question of how you deliver that. Is that going to be from a naval warship out of the Black Sea? We do have a base, a naval base nearby in Romania that I've been to, and that could be one source of delivery.
Speaking of Congress, do you think there should be congressional involvement when it comes to Venezuela? We're seeing these videos come of the U.S. bombing boats. Presidents making these decisions. Do you think that, Congress should be making them?
Well, when you're talking about authorized use of military force, we do have the War Powers Act, and that does trigger a requirement with Congress. If it's a short military action under a certain period of time, it's not required to go to Congress. Now, having said, Julie, you know, before I was chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I was chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. One of my first bills was to designate the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. I think that's what this president has done. I think Maduro and Venezuela have been a threat to Americans, bringing in these large ships of fentanyls and other narcotics to poison our children. And, you know, I've had many of my children's friends die from overdose of fentanyl. And so I think he's looking at this under Article 2 self-defense, that he has every right to defend the nation from the threat posed by the drug cartels.
Well, I'll tell you, it would be an interesting event if Congress could pass an authorization at this point, because we can't even seem to fund the government right now. We're on day 15 of a government shutdown. I understand that you've decided to forego your pay while your staff is going unpaid, and a whole lot of federal workers are as well. There was an important ruling just before we sat down with a judge saying that the president does not have the right to lay off federal workers, as the White House has been trying to do.
Yeah.
Where is this going to end? Are you concerned about mass layoffs, furloughs becoming layoffs, and in fact damaging the economy before you can get this reopened?
I've never been a fan of government shutdowns. Anytime it's been done for political reasons, typically that party that conducts that loses in the political, you know, debate. In this case, you know, we voted to keep the government open in the House. We had a clean CR that went to the Senate. The same CR, by the way, that the Democrats voted 13 times under Biden, which I voted with them 13 times, to keep the government open. I think we need to open the government back, get it back open, and start negotiating some of these issues regarding, you know, health care issues and others, because I don't think it's going to do anybody any good. Yeah, I was a federal employee at the Department of Justice when, you know, it was shut down in the 90s. And
so imagine if they laid you off right now.
Well, I was made an essential employee, so I still had to work, but then I got my back pay after that. But the fact is, I think all these federal employees will get their back pay. I don't think terminations are really the way to go here.
You know, you're talking about gridlock, Congressman, and you've seen it all in your 11 terms here. So seeing yet another shutdown, seeing this happen, seeing what it really looks like right now and what it's like to work there, did that have anything to do with you deciding not to run after being there for 11 terms?
It's been a real honor to serve. I've worked on so many incredible things in the foreign policy space and national security space. I will tell you, it didn't impact my decision. You know, there comes a time when you have to decide, you know, or you kind of know when it's time to let go of power. I don't think our founding fathers intended us to hold on forever. But I will tell you, it's different than it was 22 years ago. There's more vitriolic, there's more hatred, there's more demonization of the other party. I always try to conduct myself in a bipartisan manner with my ranking member and Democrat, because I knew to get things done, I had to be bipartisan to get it through the Senate and get it signed into law. And that made my committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, the most successful committee on the Hill and most productive. I didn't get elected to yell and scream on the camera. I got elected to get good things done for the American people in a very important national security space. I'm very proud of that record. I hope we can get back to some of that. I think what I see today, especially with the shutdown, is it's very amateurish, very childish.
Yeah.
It's not very mature. And the American people deserve better.
Congressman, please come back and see us before you end your term.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time today. We appreciate you coming in.